His brother was pals with my unfaithful ex-husband, so I avoided him. He's broke and living with our parents, who came to my house for money to aid my brother. Hi, I'm 36F and divorced from 34M Martin 5 years ago. His infidelity caused our divorce after almost 6 years together and 2 years married. After our 2-year anniversary, he confessed to having an affair with a coworker for 2 months. That was it for me. He said he wanted to give our marriage another try and be honest to me, so we could make it work. But after I found out he was cheating, there was no going back. He left because I asked him to, and we divorced, giving me the house and him a second wife. He married the coworker he had an affair with a few weeks after our divorce and moved to Philadelphia. We haven't talked or seen each other since. I'm glad I didn't give him another chance. My marriage and brother's relationship were destroyed by the affair. My 34-year-old younger brother Nick was close to Martin. He and I met in college through our mutual friends. Despite their connection, I expected Nick to support me during our divorce. Since Martin had cheated on me and Nick was my brother, I expected him to understand and support me. I was surprised to learn that Nick already knew about the divorce because Martin told him about it when I told my family about Martin's infidelity. He advised me to stay with Martin and attempt to fix our marriage because he wanted it to work. I was startled that he would suggest this and told him I would never stay with him. I was also disappointed that he was still in touch with Martin despite what he had done to me. I anticipated him to cut Martin off because I was so conflicted about the divorce and affair when I found out. We argued over that, because Nick thought it was unreasonable of me to expect something like this from him because he and Martin had been friends for a long time, and it was not his fault that we had gotten together, married, and divorced. He wants to stay out of this, and keep his connection with Martin and myself. Whether I was right or wrong, I thought it was a diplomatic stance, and I told him I wouldn't have it. I told him he could choose Martin and stay in touch with him, or he could be with me, his sister. Since we were close growing up, I anticipated him to pick me. I told my brother I didn't want him to see my ex-husband. He remained friends with Martin and thought I was irrational, surprising me. He thought I was being petty and immature, so he wanted to be around people that respected him and wouldn't make him pick between two amazing people. I was apparently flattering their ego. My disappointment led me to stop contacting Nick because he let me down. He and his affair companion attended Martin's second marriage, which sealed the deal. 5 years later, I've never spoken to him. Our parents have tried to reconcile us, but we both know our positions. He and I visit our parents on holidays. Other family gatherings like weddings bring us together, but we never talk. I have nothing to say to him. My parents constantly telling me about his accomplishments and key events. I know he launched a graphic design business 2 years ago. He had been a successful freelancer till then. So he started a business with several friends. I heard from my parents that they're doing well after 3 years. I thought it helped them. However, a few days later, my parents called to tell Nick was in difficulty and needed my aid. Nick allegedly lied about his business's performance. After 6 months of unpaid rent, he was evicted from his flat and drowning in debt. He had nowhere to go, but unlike his pals, he was too proud to move back in with his parents or ask them to pay his rent. Not sure what to say. Since they asked me to say that, I told him it was sad for him, and I wished I could help. However, I had nothing else, and then they suggested I house him to help him. He lives with his girlfriend because he has no residence. He can only stay with her for a few weeks because she has a roommate. 1 week has passed, therefore he must locate a place immediately. He can stay there for a few months till he recovers. They offered to let him stay with them, but he rejected, claiming he would never live with his parents again after so long. They also gave him money to subsist on his own, but he declined, so now they were asking me for help. I told them I wouldn't contact him because we hadn't spoken in 5 years and it would be awkward and uninteresting. Since I'm already overwhelmed, I don't need to take on others' concerns. Because we used to be close, they said I was the only one who could talk to him and make sense and possibly take my help. I reminded them we were closed. But they're no longer talking. I told them that if he declined their help, he was unlikely to accept mine. But my parents wouldn't listen and continued telling me to contact him and offer my support. Finally, I had to be firm. However, I told him I would not talk to him, which was my ultimate decision. After that, they got whiny and manipulative on the conversation and told me to stop being selfish and focus on my brother. So they say. My ego had already damaged our relationship, and I was going to do it again by not talking to him while he was down. They think talking to him would help, because he idolized me when we were friends. I could tell they were manipulating me emotionally, but I'm afraid it worked. AITA for not helping my brother. Update 1, I reconsidered and decided not to contact my brother. After contemplating, talking to friends, and reading my post comments, everyone agreed that my brother's past actions were wrong and rude. Thus I didn't owe him anything to aid him when he hadn't asked. My folks think I should contact him alone, but if he calls me first and requests for help, that's a different conversation. I called them this morning to inform them of my decision after 4 days. They have been phoning and texting me every day since I posted here to ask if I had spoken to Nick, including today. I told them to back off since I wouldn't do what they demanded. When I said that, they got manipulative and attempted to tell me I was the only one who could solve this, so I made it apparent that I didn't care. I wouldn't get involved because it wasn't my problem. My parents said Nick had a problem, so it was my responsibility too since he was my brother. They apparently think we should treat one another's problems like our own and deal with them properly since we're family. I find it intriguing that they said that to me. But they disagreed with Nick and me over the Martin scenario. According to their thinking, Nick should have cut Martin off if he cheated on me and caused me problems. It doesn't make sense to apply these new morals to me but not him. I even asked them why they didn't agree with me while I was going through something. They had no response. So instead, they stated I was twisting their comments and looking for an excuse not to help my brother, which was selfish and shameful. When they didn't have any for themselves or Nick and were trying to make me appear terrible, I told them I was fine with doing selfish and disgraceful things, but for now, I'd made up my mind and told them to stop bothering me. I believed the argument was over and was going to hang up, but my mother said something that really irritated me. She stated she always knew I had a huge ego, which was definitely a parenting failure. She had no idea I would be so callous and miserable, so maybe Nick was right to choose Martin. Everyone knows that's my sore spot, and I hate it when people bring it up, so I knew she did it to hurt me with what she said. And she succeeded. It enraged me. I was furious when I heard that, so I stopped hanging up and confronted her. I yelled at her, because I had lost my anger, and told her she had no right to say that when she knew what happened to Martin and Nick was wrong. It was unjustified. She tried to defend herself by saying she knew Nick's past actions were improper. But given the way I was acting now, she had to think that might be the best choice in the long run, because I was too selfish to care about anyone else. She was so stupid and blind that having that talk was frustrating. I wasn't aware that arguing with them was worthless because I was so upset. I wanted to yell at them until they apologized for what they said to release my rage. We argued for about 15 minutes, my parents calling me selfish, and I said they were disrespectful and only cared about my brother, not my feelings. After the dispute, I informed them I never wanted to speak to or hear from them again and left. I ended the call and blocked their numbers immediately. It's been hard to quiet down since that chat since I've been so riled up. I texted 2 friends to vent about my sentiments, and they said I was correct to block them and to contact me again. I should ignore them. I no longer need to consider this because they've made their priorities obvious. I should focus on my own difficulties, so I'll do that now. I've given these people more time and energy than they deserve. Update 2. Since blocking my parents a week ago, we haven't spoken. After blocking them and making it apparent that I would not give them what they wanted, I figured they would cease and stop bothering me. My parents pulled up to my house today and were waiting outside when I got home from work. After a hard day at work and being swamped, I was fatigued and in no mood to deal with this. When I pulled up to my house, I honked twice and ordered them to leave or I'd call the police for trespassing. Instead of leaving, they walked up to my car and stated they wanted to talk to me and were not in the mood to fight, so I needed to give them some time and come out. I was tired. I wasn't in the mood to talk about Nick. I wanted them to leave and promised to unblock and talk to them later, but I needed my space and time. Later they told me Nick had moved back in with him because he had no alternative. He tried to talk to his girlfriend to extend his stay, but she told him that her roommates were not happy and that he needed to leave because she had made a promise to them that she would not let him stay for more than 2 weeks, and that this was only temporary. If he remained to live with her, he would have to split the rent and other costs with them, as she couldn't let him live for free because he was her boyfriend. They fought over that, because Nick thought she was being unfair and should have been more considerate of his situation, because he had to close his business and didn't have a source of income, so he couldn't go back there. It was upsetting, but it wasn't my fault, so I told my parents I wouldn't talk to him and let him live with me if they needed to. They said that wasn't why they were here. They came to me for financial assistance since Nick had moved back in with them, and they had to pay for everything. Since they were retired, they couldn't sustain him without worrying about their future. They asked me for financial assistance to avoid overworking. They claimed I didn't have to talk to Nick, just send them money for a few months till he recovered. Nick recovered this time. They claimed they had done a lot for me over the years and raised me to be able to achieve well for myself, so they expected me to agree without any argument. Thus, I owed them assistance when requested. I did not want to say anything, so I said I had to think about it and let them know. Because I was weary from work and could not decide right away. I thought it was appropriate to ask for time to contemplate because what they were asking was huge. First of all, I didn't know how much I had to send each month. Nick was unsure when or if he would recover. I wanted time to think about this before committing, but instead of allowing me time and honoring my words, they started pressing me immediately away. They insisted I do this while I was in the car. I owed them, and that was driving me crazy. I got out of my car and told them to leave, or I would call the police, because I was fed up with their BS. They claimed they felt I was bluffing and knew I wouldn't do that. I told them not to test me and gave them one last warning, but they persisted. I grabbed my phone and contacted the police as promised. I performed it in front of them, and their disbelief was worth watching. They were so foolish that they argued with me until the police came and dragged them off instead of leaving. I'm blocking them now that it's finished. I spoke to my lawyer and think we'll need to seek for a restraining order against them since things are getting out of hand and I can't cope with this again. Update 3. I had my parents visit my residence a few days ago and stated I was filing for a restraining order. I finally spoke to my lawyer yesterday, and we decided to proceed, filing the petition today. I hope I can get a protective order against them since their behavior is out of control. I blocked them a long time ago, so they couldn't reach me, therefore they probably harassed me in other ways. How they did it is unknown, although they probably paid someone. Since I phoned the police, things had gotten weird. That day, nothing occurred, but the next day I started getting calls from a multitude of numbers. I responded a few times, but they would hang up as soon as I replied. After blocking the number, the same thing happened with other numbers, and I stopped answering calls from unknown numbers because it was creepy. Even worse, these numbers started sending me texts that I would have to pay for my actions and that my parents would never forgive me. There was also a lot of name calling, including calling me a greedy brat and some truly awful curse words. I know my parents are behind everything, which is why I went to my lawyer and filed for a restraining order. None of this is natural. I don't think they should expect my support after this. I've tried to respect the fact that we're family and not take any action, but they don't care about my mental health or well-being. It's disappointing since they know I've been through a lot, including my divorce from Martin and my work struggles for a few years. I've had my share of challenges, and now that I'm doing well, they want to bring me down. I can't understand loving your child and acting like this. But maybe they don't love me, and that's okay. I've accepted that and don't care. Update 4. After 2 weeks, I got a restraining order against my parents. I won after much fighting. Thanks to their crazy behavior, Nick is no longer living with them, which I'm glad about. I didn't have time to post updates because I started a new project. Anyway, after my parents were served, it was too risky for them to approach me after what they had done. He contacted Nick after they decided to discuss it. I never blocked him because I didn't think one of us would reach out after we stopped talking. Just kind of forgot about it. Anyway, he messaged me to say he was disappointed that I had taken such an extreme step against our parents after everything they had done for us. It was the same routine, he reminded me, that they had reared us, and we should be grateful. But I was rude and disrespectful. I was furious when I read the letter, because I was pompous, and told him it was easier for him to say that, since they were going above and beyond to serve him. He probably meant to label me selfish and entitled for not providing him with the money he needed. And he replied that he had never asked me to help him and would never expect it from me because I was that selfish. I said he didn't need to ask me because our parents were already talking on his behalf, so if he wanted to blame someone, he could look in the mirror. When I sent that message, he immediately contacted me, and I responded because I just wanted to talk about this and get it over with. I guess he didn't know our parents had been hounding me to help him for so long. He asked me what I was talking about because he didn't remember telling our parents he wanted help. Told him everything that happened, and hung up suddenly. I purposefully told Nick about our parents' constant harassment since I knew he wouldn't know. No word from him afterward. But I heard from other family members that Nick had walked out of the house and was staying with a friend since he knew our parents had been begging me for money to aid him. They first asked me to reach out to him and offer my support, indicating that they thought he couldn't handle it alone. He thought this was an attack on him and his abilities, so they fought viciously. My relatives discovered this how. Naturally, they were shocked. My parents were weeping about how I had damaged my relationship with everyone and brainwashed my brother against them by speaking out of turn. A couple of my family members who had been contacted by my parents told me what I was doing was wrong, so I told them too. After everyone knew the real and full story, including what my parents had done to me, which had warranted these actions from my end, they seemed to realize I wasn't in the wrong and apologized for attacking me without knowing the full truth. Nobody talks to my parents, and everyone has shunned them. After everything my parents have done, I think this was necessary. They blame me for nobody talking to them anymore, but the restraining order prevents them from doing anything. Until he sees how he screwed up in the past, Nick and I will remain estranged due to his attitude toward life. I doubt it will happen soon. Like our parents, he'll always be too proud and involved to admit his mistakes. It's usual, but as long as my life's good, I don't care. All I'll do now is work on my new projects and live well.